Welcome to Beer and Iron, the show where cast iron gets the respect it deserves, and the beer isn't just for drinking, it's for cooking too. Grab a beer, set that cast iron on the heat, and prepare to flip your expectations. We're serving up tales and recipes that are well seasoned and never half-baked. This is where the good stories live. I'm Sulae, Sultan of Skillet Stories and Master of Meal Monologues, here to share a story, cook something worth eating, and bring the yum back to your plate. I had a Boy Scout Scoutmaster reach out to me one time, a good man, a brave man, who wanted to make beer and irons chicken pot pie in a camp cast iron Dutch oven, but he was terrified. Not of the boys, not of the fire, not even of the raccoons. He was terrified of the mamas. He knew if those mamas saw beer cans in the camp kitchen, they'd frown so hard their faces might invert like a flapjack launched by a man whose confidence far outweighs his wrist strength. So this Scoutmaster comes to me in the tone of a man seeking legal counsel, and he says,
"Is there any chance, maybe, I could substitute something for the beer?"
This wasn't about alcohol. It was about optics. He knew the alcohol would cook off long before the first scout got a scoopful, leaving behind a merit badge worth of flavor. But still, optics, right? So I told him, use broth, my friend, broth. Cook's prerogative. That whole Scoutmaster situation reminded me of my old buddy Barley Hopper. Y'all ever heard about Barley? No. Well, buckle up then, I'm gonna tell you all about him. Barley was a good old boy with a pretty wife.
The mirror started clapping.
Cute daughter.
Thank you.
And, well, doggone, Barley was just lucky. After a long day at work, he set out to make his legendary beer-braised chili. Barley didn't believe in preparing ingredients ahead of time. Meze in place was for people who read instructions. His meals were born in glorious, chaotic scramble time.
Go, go, go.
He browned the meat, softened the onions, and sprinkled spices like he was feeding pigeons in the park. Then he reached for the beer. Except the beer was gone. None in the fridge, none in the pantry, not even that one pumpkin spice porter from 2019 his wife must have finally thrown away. And now he's regretting tossing that rogue can of beer that's been rolling around in the back of his truck since the summer fishing trip. In rising panic, Barley attacked the fridge like it owed him money. Behind the pickles, behind the leftovers he swore he'd eat. He even opened the vegetable drawer, which hadn't been touched since the Bush administration. And then he saw it. Behind the mustard, in the place where ingredients go to die, a half-full, questionably expired box of chicken broth slumped over like it'd given up on life. He studied the expiration date, like a weather forecast, with polite disbelief. And then he opened the cap, gave it a deep whiff, muttered a prayer, and then he poured it into his emotionally unprepared chili. Later that night, as his family gathered around the table, chili in bowls, topped with a scoop of white rice, sprinkled with chives, and then crowned with a dollop of sour cream, Barley braced for disaster. He waited for someone to say,
"Did you do something different?"
But those first bites, all around yums.
Yum.
Oh, yum.
His daughter inhaled hers so fast he wasn't entirely sure she'd even tasted it. His wife paused for a bit and then gave that little head bob she does when her taste buds are tickled in that very interesting way. Proof, undeniable proof, that the universe does occasionally reward chaos. And that right there, that moment when chaos turns to dinner, that's the beating heart of beer and iron. Yes, we cook in cast iron. Yes, we use beer. But I'm not the kind of cook who turns up his nose if you swap out broth for a lager or water. Cast iron is seldom negotiable, but beer, it's always flexible. Beer is a flavor, not a commandment. Broth works, water works, and hope it works in a pinch. Tea? Yeah, tea doesn't work. Don't ask me why. I don't really make the rules. Well, actually I do, and tea is a hard no. And even if you make Granddaddy's cornbread in an aluminum pan, friend, if it held the heat and it didn't melt, you're all good. Grandma Kelly, well, she once made cornbread in a coffee can because the skillet was busy frying chicken. No, she didn't do that. That was a lie. But you get the idea. Beer is wonderful, but it's not a religion. Use what you got. The beer as an ingredient spirits are retired on a beach in Bora Bora, sipping their cocktails and not giving a single worried wiggle about what you put in your recipes. Cook's Prerogative is older than cast iron, older than chili, and definitely older than that one food blogger who insists you must toast every spice individually while chanting in Sanskrit. For the everyday cook, the weeknight warriors, and the I swear I had beer in here improvisers, you are free to ignore the recipe police who lurk in the comment sections waiting to type,
"Well, actually,"
smile politely, and ignore completely. Let the food snobs clutch their pearls. Let the purists gasp into their aprons. If a recipe calls for beer and all you've got is broth, congratulations, you're a free citizen of your kitchen. If you swap a stout for a lager for a broth, or broth for water, or even water for whatever's in that unlabeled jar in the back of the refrigerator, that's not a mistake. That's innovation. Because Cook's Prerogative means this: you're not breaking the rules. You're exercising your rights. Beer is a tool, not the rule. Cast iron is the preference, not the protocol. Recipes are invitations and not obligations. And with that spirit in mind, let's get into the recipe my wife loves almost as much as she loves me. It's not chili, it's squash. Yellow squash, beef, sausage, tomato, onion, and a whole mess of eggs topped with toasted cheese. Cook's Prerogative Squash Casserole. It's a perfect example of Cook's Prerogative in action. I'll cook it in cast iron, sure, but I'm also going to prep a few things in stainless steel. Instead of adding the beer to the recipe, I'm going to be drinking that beer. This is a casserole. Beer will make it a little bit too wet. But if you want to add beer to the recipe, remember Cook's Prerogative. All right, let's cook. I usually like to have all my ingredients pre-prepared and lined up just perfect, so when things get hot, it's showtime and not scramble time. But in this case, there are steps that can be overlapped and create a flow that saves time. A printable list of the recipe ingredients and the steps can be found over at beerandiron.com. Hey, and don't worry, there's no account to sign up for, and you'll actually be able to see the recipes rather than be bombarded by ads. We need to parboil the squash in salty water. Squash is generally boring all by itself. Grandma Kelly once said about cooking plain vegetables,
"Well, that's not cooking. That's just warming up disappointment. Y'all cook with butter, salt, love, and zero apologies."
a squash's skin is generally called the rind, which can be thin and edible like a yellow squash, or tough and usually discarded like pumpkins or butternut. If we added the yellow squash to the recipe without parboiling, the inside of the squash would be fine, but the rind, that yellow skin, would be tougher and not very friendly on the palate. To parboil something is to give it a head start. It's a little pre-game warm-up in boiling water before the real cooking begins. It's like telling your squash, "All right, buddy, loosen up. We're going to get into the skillet next." Parboiling gets food partially cooked so it's ready to shine when you roast it, fry it, or, in this case, bake it into something glorious. Now, some folks are going to tell you that parboiling must be followed by shocking it in an ice water bath. And sure, that's a thing when you want the parboiled food to stop cooking. For this recipe, nope, we're not shocking anything except maybe the people who think casseroles should be delicate. Parboiling takes the food to about 30 to 70% done, depending on what you're making and how bossy you're feeling that day. Blanching, on the other hand, is the quick dip, a fast boil or steam, and then a dunk in ice water like you're baptizing it into the Church of Chill. Parboiling gets things moving. Blanching says, behave yourself. Parboiling and blanching are not cousins, more like distant acquaintances who nod politely at the grocery store. Slice your 4 pounds of squash into 1/2-inch thick discs, about 1 centimeter thick. Place them in a stainless steel pot or your cast iron Dutch oven, whichever you're using today. Cook's Prerogative. Add water just up to the level of the squash, and then add 3 to 4 tablespoons of salt. There's a big difference between 3 and 4 tablespoons of salt, but I can't taste salty for you. To give context, the parboil will take a little more than a gallon or about 4 liters of water. Play it safe the first time. maybe just 3 tablespoons, and at the table make a note for next time. Fortunately, this is one recipe that salting at the table will work great if it's not salty enough. Set the pot over medium to medium-high heat and let the squash parboil until the rind has a nice texture when you sample it, about 50 to 70% done. If the inside gets too mushy, but the rind is cooked just right, friend, you're doing it right. Not all squash is created equal, especially that one big old squash that got away from you in the garden. If it overcooks a bit, it'll be okay. Once the parboiling is finished, strain it thoroughly and let it cool. No ice bath, no cold water. Cooling it with water will wash away the salt and break up the squash. Just let it sit there and relax. Step 2. Brown your meats. While the squash is doing its little parboiled dance, grab the 12-inch cast iron skillet and melt a bit of butter, bacon grease, or whatever cooking fat makes your heart sing. Start with about 1 to 1.5 tablespoons. You can brown the meat while the squash is parboiling. These are steps that you can do together. Add your sausage, 1/4 to 1/2 pound, and brown it first. If you're using link sausage, slice it into medallions, those little sausage coins, and give them a good sear. That toasted edge is flavor you don't want to miss out on. Once the sausage has some color, add a pound of hamburger meat and brown it right alongside. Break it up, let it sizzle, let it get acquainted with that skillet. When everything is browned and smelling delicious, like a hug you could eat, set the meat aside and let it cool. We'll mix it in later, but not while it's still hot enough to accidentally start cooking our eggs we'll talk about in a bit. Step 3. Saute the onions and the garlic. By now, the squash is still doing its thing, so keep the momentum going. In that same 12-inch cast iron skillet, toss in your chopped onions and garlic. Let them hit that fat and wake up the whole kitchen. Saute the onions until they soften, and the garlic starts smelling like you've made at least one good decision today. Scrape up any of those brown bits left behind by the hamburger and sausage, because that's flavor, and that flavor will cling to that pan like it pays rent. Once everything is softened and smelling right, set the onion and garlic aside to cool. We'll mix them in later, but not while they're hot enough to pick a fight with those eggs. Step 4. The bell pepper. Add the bell pepper to the skillet and saute until it softens. You could have just thrown the pepper in with the onion and garlic, but hey, cook's prerogative. Once the pepper is tender and looking friendly, set it aside with the onions and the garlic to cool. Step 5. Drain and cool the squash. Once your squash has finished its parboil, go ahead and strain it thoroughly. Let that water run off like it's late for an appointment. The more moisture you get rid of now, the better your casserole will set later. Now, and this is important, don't cool it with water. No rinsing, no shocking, no baptizing. Cooling it with water will wash away some of the salt you've worked so hard to put in that squash. It'll also break up the squash like it heard some bad news. Just spread the squash out and let it cool in the open air or the fridge. Give it a little space to relax. We're letting everything cool because of the eggs. We don't want those eggs cooking early and turning this into a scramble squash situation. Step 6. Now it's time to set up your mix-ins. Think of this as the calm before the glorious casserole storm. Grab a few bowls or containers. We're about to get organized. In one container, measure out 1/2 cup of white flour. Simple enough. In another, scramble your 4 eggs. And listen, if this leaves one lonely egg sitting in that carton in the refrigerator, go ahead and use it. 5 eggs won't hurt a thing. Cook's prerogative. In a third container, mix your seasonings. 1 to 2 teaspoons or more of smoked paprika, 1/2 to 1 teaspoon of black pepper, and 1 to 2 teaspoons of salt, adjusting for however much salty sass your squash has picked up during the parboiling. Remember, I can't taste salty for you. In a fourth container, chop up 1 to 2 tomatoes and let them drain. If you're using canned fire-roasted tomatoes, drain them well. That juice you pour off, well, that's basically tomato gold. Sip it, save it, or dump it. I'm not here to judge. Once everything is measured, chopped, drained, and looking respectable, let it cool. You can stash these containers in the refrigerator for a day or two if you're pacing yourself. But me, I'm hungry now. We're moving on to step 7. Once everything has cooled down and stopped trying to cook on its own, grab a bowl or a pot at least twice the size of all your ingredients. You want room to move. This is not a dainty stir. This is a full-on mix fest. Make sure your eggs are pre-scrambled and ready to go, and then start adding everything in. The meat, the onions, the garlic, the bell pepper, the tomatoes, the flour, the seasoning, and finally your eggs. Now mix. Mix it like you mean it. Get all the way to the bottom and pull everything up. And when you think you got everything mixed up good, give it one more go. This is a casserole, not a negotiation. We want every bite to taste like it was involved in the same party. Don't worry if your squash breaks up a bit. It's supposed to do that. Step 8. Now grab your 12-inch cast iron skillet or whatever you're planning to bake this beauty in. I like my 12-inch cast iron skillet, but whatever you got that holds the heat and holds it still will do just fine. Take about a tablespoon of butter and give that skillet a good, honest smear. Coat the bottom, run it up the sides, and make it buttery like it's about to host something important. This isn't just greasing a pan. It's laying down the welcome mat for your casserole and giving it a non-stick hint so it knows when it's time to leave. Step 9. Set your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 175 degrees Celsius for my metric-minded friends. Give the oven time to come all the way up to temperature. A good casserole deserves a hot, ready oven and not one that's still thinking about it. Step 10. Bake the casserole. Pour your fully mixed casserole into that buttered skillet and smooth off the top like you're tucking it in for a well-deserved nap. Use a rubber or silicone spatula to get everything level. You could slightly mound it in the middle. Better to be convex than to be concave. Bake it until the internal temperature reaches 160 degrees Fahrenheit or 72 degrees Celsius. That's the safe point for eggs, but the casserole may still be a little bit wet at that stage. If you want a firmer set and a nicer mouthfeel, let it keep cooking. You could go all the way up to about 190 degrees Fahrenheit or 88 degrees Celsius, or even higher is perfectly fine. But remember, step 11 is our cheese and broil stage where we're going to cook it a little bit longer. Step 11. Once the casserole is baked, pull it from the oven and set the oven to broil. Sprinkle a generous handful or 2 of shredded cheese over the top, about 8 ounces. Cheddar, Colby Jack, pepper jack, whatever melts your heart and your casserole. Remember, cook's prerogative. Slide the skillet back into the oven on broil and keep a close eye on it. Broiling goes from perfectly toasted to call the fire department faster than you think. Let the cheese bubble, brown, and turn into whatever irresistible toasty lid makes the casserole feel proud of itself. Step 12. Serve it and enjoy it. Once the cheese is melted, toasted, and looking like it could win a small-town beauty pageant, pull the skillet from the oven and let the casserole rest for a few minutes. This gives everything time to settle, relax, and become sliceable rather than sloshable. Garnish with a little dried parsley or any dried leafy herb you like. Scoop it out with a big spoon or cut it into wedges, whatever feels right in the moment. Serve it hot, serve it proud, and serve it to people you like enough to feed. This casserole is hearty, comforting, and flexible enough to fit any table. Breakfast, lunch, supper, midnight snack, cook's prerogative. You enjoy every bite because you've earned it. I know y'all'll love this recipe. I get everything cooked up on a Sunday and prepared along with my Sunday supper cooking, and then I'm all set for Monday night. I'll get home, dump my mixed ingredients into that cast iron skillet, and by the time I finish my beer, it's ready for the oven. And then maybe I'll split one more beer with my wife. You've built this hearty, meaty, cheesy, cast iron kissed squash casserole, so serve it with sides that are ones that either lighten the plate, balance the richness, or lean into the comfort food vibe without competing for attention. Truth, this casserole does just fine by itself, It's got protein, vegetables, and carbs all mixed up into one pan of awesomeness. Maybe a dollop of sour cream. But for me, I'm taking my bowl and enjoying it all by itself. I don't usually drink beer with my meal. Even so, every good casserole does deserve a good beer. Not because you need it, but because it makes the whole experience feel like a small celebration. For this dish, you want to find something friendly, flavorful, and not trying to steal the spotlight. A crisp lager, a light amber, or a mellow pale ale will sit right beside this casserole like an old friend who knows when to talk and when just to nod approvingly. If you're feeling bold, a malty brown ale or a nutty porter can add a little richness to the moment, like putting on a flannel shirt even though the house isn't cold. And if beer isn't your thing today, that's fine. Iced tea or a tall glass of water with too much ice, both count as perfectly respectable choices. Cook's prerogative extends to the glass too. Whatever your pour, raise it with intention. You've made a casserole worth celebrating. At Beer and Iron, I'm not so stuck on cast iron I won't cook recipes in other cookware. Yeah, it can be done. I just love cast iron, and I've dedicated this podcast to cast iron. But use what you got and what you want. It's your meal, friends. Ain't nobody gonna judge you. And beer? Yeah. Most of the time you can substitute broth for beer, except for the banana papple recipe. No, don't use broth in the banana papple. Remember, the kitchen is yours, the skillet is yours, the meal is yours, and the rules are yours to bend. Cook's Prerogative. And there you go. Cook's Prerogative squash casserole is yours to try and enjoy. Now, y'all don't be strangers. Let me know how yours turns out at beerandiron.com and join the conversation. At Beer and Iron, there's always room for one more at our table. Here's to the sizzling skillets and the overflowing stories. Cheers until we meet again, and may your cornbread never crumble and your beer never go flat. We'll see you next time on beerandiron.com.